Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership at TEPSA. And each episode, I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another, and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to share some of yours. I am thrilled this week to have my friend and special guest, Leonard Galloway, on. Leonard, tell everybody about who you are.
Hello, everyone. Leonard Galloway from the great state of South Carolina, Anderson, South Carolina, to be more specific. I am married for it'll be 21 years next month. Have two great kids, Bradley and Addison. My wife's name is Tamara. I'm the principal of this great school, Glenview Middle School. I'm rocking the apparel here today at Anderson School District 5. I love teaching, love education. It's a tad bit different right now, as you may know, but hopefully we'll be able to get through this sooner rather than later. So.
I love it. Well, you know, Leonard, you and I met through Wade King and then through Get Your Lead On, and I have just been blown away with some of the stuff that you're able to do, so I'm excited to get to kind of talk today. But, you know, whenever I interview an educator, I always like to start with way back in the beginning. Because I always feel like there's two types of educators. Those of us who knew from little bitty we were going to be a teacher, and those of us who are like, I didn't know, I just fell into it, and then I loved it and stayed. And so which category do you fall in? When did you know you were going to be a teacher?
Well, you know what? I had the opportunity. I went through the tracks of I did my what we call teacher cadet in high school. My senior year, I had the opportunity to go with the Westside High School. I had to throw a shout out to Westside High School. But anyway, I had an excellent principal there, Mr. Henry A. there, who I built a great relationship with, and I aspired to be like him. But anyway, during my senior year, I had the opportunity to go into a fifth grade classroom with Corey Roberts, who at the time was, you know, just a rock star in his school, and the kids just loved him. Not only did he teach, he would go outside during recess and play kickball with them, and that relationship he held with them was just remarkable. Right. But even saying all that, my first year of college, I was a business major. At the time I was doing my high school time, I was working at the bank doing processing checks. I mean, like the numeric part of the keyboard, I have it hands down, because when checks come by, I have to put the number in there. So I felt like, hey, I'm in the business field, so I think I may just try to go with banking. Well, going through college, you know, you have more than one job. So not only was I doing that, I was working at the YMCA too. So I was working with kids and enjoying it. And I was like, so I can actually get paid to play with kids? I mean, to work with kids and things like that. And so it was that moment that I realized, you know, I'm going in the wrong tracks. I need to get out of this economics class and go and start taking some elementary ed classes. So I went to Anderson University, took some elementary classes, and I became an elementary teacher. And what's funny about all that, the name I mentioned earlier, Corey Roberts, was the classroom I went into as a senior in high school. His first year as a principal was my first year teaching, and I was at his school. So it was remarkable how our paths joined back together. And I was one of those, I didn't want to just stay in the classroom either. I wanted to impact kids more than the 24 kids that were in my class. Yeah. So during recess, I'm out there playing kickball with everybody, playing football with everybody and whatnot. And so what grew from being in the classroom eventually evolved into having opportunities to be an administrative assistant. Then I ended up becoming an assistant principal at the school I was doing my student teaching in my first job. And then I went on to become a principal. And so it's a tad bit different now. I'm not just with kids, but as many times as I can be with kids, I try to use that opportunity. And as you can remember, one of my go-tos is Uno. So I try to build relationships with my kids by playing Uno whenever I can. Of course, the opportunities do not present itself as much as I like.
Right.
But and I mentioned this to you all too. You know, as a leader, as the principal of the school, you think I would take into consideration the feelings of the kids when we're playing Uno, but I do not. No, I do not.
Sometimes you just gotta slap it down and let them see you can't always win.
Exactly. And I'm not the best loser either. That's the sad thing about it. You think I will teach the kids how to lose? Oh no, it irritates me to lose. So if I have that last card and it's a game time, that's the game decision, and it's everything's on the line, I will throw that thing in their face and ask the kids to leave. So it's great. It's great.
Okay, so I know you are using the Uno and you love Uno. Where did that love from Uno come from?
Oh, it's a childhood game.
Growing up with my brothers and my cousins, I've seen a couple of memes like this, but there's nothing more serious at a family reunion or at a dinner than playing Uno. I mean, feelings are going to get hurt, but there's a little ego that goes with it too. You're the champion if you can beat your cousins and stuff. So that's where it comes from. So it's really a good relationship there.
Well, you've been a teacher, you've been an assistant, you've been a principal. So what do you think was the biggest lesson you learned from, or you are learning or have learned from being a principal that was kind of unexpected within your other roles moving up?
You know what? I've been given the opportunity to see things really from a global perspective. The thing about it, once you're in the classroom, you have an idea of what you think the principal and the assistant principal they're doing, but it's not until you get into that role that you realize, oh, that's why they did it. Yep. And even when I was the assistant principal, that's the closest you can be to a principal, but there are still some things that it was Kelly Elrod was my principal that I served under. And so there would be some things I'm like, why is she doing like this? Or what's going on like this? Well, because I'm only looking at it from the frame of an assistant principal. But when I became a principal, I realized that this decision, something as simple as car rider duty or dismissal, I need to make sure that I understand that it's going to have an impact not only on the students, but on the parents, on the community across the street, maybe my buses that are dropping off kids as well. So as I've been able to move from position to position, I've been able to, and I think because I'm a principal, I have a deeper appreciation of the classroom teacher. Mm-hmm. And I think hands down to folks, and I'm not saying that you cannot serve effectively as a principal if you've never been a teacher, but right. I tell you, it definitely helps that you've been a teacher because you can see what it takes to really teach kids from various perspectives and from various backgrounds.
And I completely agree with that. I think you're so right that experience as a teacher really does prepare you for being a principal. But like you said, it doesn't really matter what role you serve until you are the principal. You have no idea all the ins and outs because you're like, oh, I think I know all what they do. And then you get in this job and you're like, whoa, okay, there's a lot that I wasn't ready for. That's now, right. One thing that I always love about you is when I hear you speak, whether it's through this interview or when I saw you present, I feel like I'm at church. Like you bring this energy and this attitude that's very reminiscent of a pastor preaching to his congregation. Have you heard that before?
I have heard it before. And Todd, if you like to give a love offering right now,
that was the best answer that I was not expecting. I love that so much. Well, it's funny because I still remember that there was a presentation I did at a tech conference, and one of the ladies came to me afterwards. She was like, I just got to tell you, I felt like I was in church. Like, I felt like you were just up there preaching. And I wanted to say amen. And I said, well, then I feel like I'm doing something right because that's the energy you want to have. And so, are you just naturally an energetic person, or are you somebody who I can turn it on to be that person for them when they need that? But then behind the scenes, I'm kind of more level headed. Like, where do you fall in there?
I'm a people person, and I want to see people happy. Mm-hmm. And I've always think that, like for instance, with school, I use the analogy. I love basketball, and I tell kids, and I demonstrate with that. I bring a ball and I just start running. Well, what foul did what did I just do that was illegal? Well, I didn't bounce the ball. I walked or whatever. Well, what I want them to understand is that even though I walk, doesn't take the game of basketball, doesn't make it less fun. But we have rules we have to abide by. Yeah. And so I try to bring that into the school as well. You can't run down the hallway. You can't talk about people. You have to treat people with respect. But it doesn't take away the enjoyment of coming to school. So like when you go back to saying, in regards to a church field, I think that church is the place that you receive your inspiration. It's that place that you make connections and you depend on people and folks are praying for each other and they're loving on each other and things like that. And I do try, and I come from a very strong background from church in that we believe in, that everything's going to be okay. We all have things that we go through, but at the end of the day, everything's still going to be okay. And so and I try to bring that into the school. We have our trials and tribulations. Kids come from various backgrounds. Everyone doesn't live on the golf course. And at the same time, but everybody has the same set of problems. So I try to treat every kid that comes to this school with as much dignity and respect and realize that they deserve it. They deserve my attention. They deserve to be loved. And we all come in here with a different set of situations.
but everyone is capable of being better than who they are. So my goal is to make kids better than on the very. I want there to be a significant difference on from day one to day 180. You know that song I sung when we had our conference. We won't leave here like we came in Jesus' name. So when they come to Glenview Middle School, they're not gonna leave here like they came. So that's my goal, and that's something that I want to empower my teachers to believe as well. That the kids are significantly better because they were impacted by you as a teacher. And I hope that's the same thing when it comes back to me as a person.
Well, it's so powerful hearing that, and then knowing that you are a people person too. I'm sure this whole COVID-19 has just got to be even more draining on somebody like you, who just feeds off of that interaction with the kids and the staff and everything. So how are you handling this difference that we're dealing with and this unexpected right now in education?
Well, well, from a teacher standpoint, we have the faculty meetings weekly. Try to encourage them and try not to let the faculty meetings just be those information giving thing. About 2 weeks ago, we played Kahoot during our faculty meeting, just sort of because the teachers need some love too. Yeah. They miss their kids, and a group of my teachers came to me, and what's going around nationwide is the parades. And so a group of teachers came and wanted to do a parade. And I tell you, that was the best thing ever because we were able to go out to the community and to all of our community, and as many as we possibly can go to, and to see the kids waving. And of course, we want to hug them, but we can't hug them. I'm a hugging guy. Yeah. And it hurts me not to be able to just make sure, because I think when you hug kids, they feel that sense of security that you care for them. And, and again, that was something that I received growing up as a kid. So I try to look up for my teachers for that standpoint, make sure they're secure. But as far as my kids, unfortunately with this, we do have a thing that we are, some of my leadership team, we are calling kids just to ensure that they are taking care of themselves and things like that. And I really want to do more, man. What's school without kids in a building? And, I'm appreciative of technology, and I think it works well, but nothing can replace a teacher in the classroom. I think technology does a great way of enhancing the educational experience, but there's nothing like a great teacher. I know you remember your first teacher, not necessarily your first teacher, your most impactful teacher. Yeah. And just think about it. We have schools full of impactful teachers, and I can only be so much impactful with this camera right now. Yeah. So,
and I've been telling people now lately, it's like, none of us signed up to be a teacher behind a computer screen. Right. We all signed up to be in a school with kids interacting. And that's why this is so difficult for educators that are going through this. And, to switch gears a little bit, you're active on some social media as well, sharing great things that are happening. And so I know you are taking in and being inspired from others as well. And sometimes when we get in those places, we can begin to compare ourselves or not feel like we're doing enough, or that it's not good enough, and that doubt can begin to creep in on us as leaders. And so how do you keep doubt at bay so that it doesn't consume you?
Well, I try to see the positive in all this. And I will say there is some positive in this, in that I am spending more time with my family. Yeah. And I think that having a good sound support system it is what's going to keep us too. So I look at my situation, I look at the kids' situation as well, and I would love to think that all of our kids come from very great home environments. That's not necessarily the case. And so with those kids, we do try to reach out with them more so through our social workers and things like this. So even with this whole situation right here, I'm spending a little more time with my family. I'm reading a little bit more. And one of my favorite, I'm a Maxwell fan. I keep Maxwell all around my book. But you know what? To be honest with you, Ty, I've been reading my Bible a whole lot more here lately because I'm a strong believer in Christ, and I believe that everything happens for a reason. There's a reason all this is happening right now. It really is. That's to strengthen our family. That's to strengthen our community, and that's to strengthen our nation as well. Because I do believe that there's only really one source. I'm not trying to turn this into a church thing at all, but there is only one way to get us through this, and that is through God. So I think that all this is going to work out for the good. We're going to be better because of it. As I mentioned earlier, we're not going to leave this thing the way we came into it. Yes, sir.
You know, and that's so
positive.
that's so true. And you know, it's so important of having that perspective, because you know, we could look at this as the most terrible thing ever and not find any good. But you know, even with the company the organization that I work for, we've been doing these daily chats with leaders, and every day we say, tell me one thing you have seen in person that's good or that you've heard about online. And it's like, it's so easy to find the good amidst the bad if you're looking for it. Otherwise, you can see only the bad, only the negative, only the stuff you want to complain about. But there is a lot of good that is already coming out of this. And it doesn't mean that the bad doesn't count or it doesn't exist. But when we change our perspective, we can take things in a whole new light.
Well, Ty, can I add to that too? Because one thing that I think that the world is seeing too is that the adaptability of teachers. We've always known that we can modify and adjust throughout the day. You know, we may have an uncalled assembly or a fire drill may happen, whatever. So we used to adapt it, but now we're adapting more so on a larger scale. And you know, we've seen folks come together in my district, in neighboring district, across the state, across the nation, and folks who've had the means to present e-learning, but there are some folks who did not have the means, but they were ready. They were ready to still implement education the best way they possibly could. So I think this is a plus for all of our educators out there, for the world to see that we modify and adjust like no other.
Yeah. You know, I think you're exactly right. This is a very public display of what educators are capable of. I mean, like you said, us in the mix, we've known it. But now everybody around the world is getting to see that, wow, teachers do a lot of work at the school, and they flipped it on a dime. And so,
that's right.
You know, when you look back on your life, Leonard, and you reflect on the things you've been through, the positives, the trials, the successes, the pain, you know, whenever you reflect on all that, what is one thing that comes to mind that you say, ooh, that was really instrumental in creating the man we see today?
Oh, I mean, everything goes back to my faith. I can't really deny that. But I think we all are brought into this world for a purpose. Just figure out, we all are brought, and I feel that my purpose is to encourage. And I'm not perfect at all. Listen, I make mistakes. Right. I mean, you talk to my wife all the time. I make mistakes all the time, according to her. But anyway, so everybody knows me perfect. But I do feel like God has placed it in my heart to just encourage folks, to be a champion for folks, be a champion for the underdogs. There are folks out there who need advocates. And I want to advocate for the ones who don't have the advocates. There are some folks who are handed a silver spoon in their mouth. But then there are some folks who are handed a plastic spoon. And what I want the kids to understand to have the plastic spoon is that plastic spoon does the same thing that the silver spoon does. And that's feeds you or whatever. So you take what you have, you make the most of it, and you leave something better for the generation to come. So I want you to leave some type of inheritance that your kids and the folks that come up to you or the folks that come into contact with you, that they're going to be able to take away with them, and they will definitely be a better person because of it. If we continue on with that mindset, man, this world will definitely be a better place.
I love that. Well, you know, Leonard, who is somebody who has really played a big role in your life?
We can't go on my parents. My dad is so strong. Like, he's going through dialysis right now. So, you know, but you know, and that's been challenging for me, that he's lost a lot of weight or whatever, but he still has a fantastic attitude about it.
Right.
He goes through it, and talk about somebody that'll fight for his family. I can recall growing up, and borderline scared of him, but he was I call him a lion with no teeth. So he had the biggest roar, whatever. But man, that dude don't have any teeth. He's not gonna bite. And the way he treats my kids now, his grandkids, I'm like, who is this guy that raised me who forgot where he came from? But anyway, so my parents are inspiration. My family in general, they're an inspiration. And I have so many good. I've been surrounded. I've been able to tell folks my goal, even going into education, and once I graduated, I knew I wanted to be a principal. And there are some folks who stood right beside me to make sure that I was presented with the opportunities to fulfill my goals. And there are other things I want to do too. And I think it's very important that you have friends who are not always going to tell you yes, but they're going to tell you what you need to hear. And sometimes that's yes, and sometimes that no, and sometimes that you crazy for thinking that. And so you can't surround yourself with a bunch of yes men. So I think it's very important to have yourself surrounded around folks who will be honest with you, whether it's something you want to hear or something that you do not want to
You know, and I think that's such great advice. The episode that I just did before this one was with Christina Grant, and she said the same thing. She said, you know, I surround myself with people who will uplift me and encourage me and remind me who I am, but also people who will tell me, you're acting like a fool, like, stop it, or
That's right.
no, don't do that. Like, you are right to think that, you're crazy, stop. Or
That's right.
things like that. And so I think you're exactly right. You know, when you surround yourself with yes men who just always tell you you're amazing, you're going to build this ego, and you're not going to be able to serve people the way you should. And so I think, you know, that's what I love about you is you have such a servant heart that you're always looking for ways that you can help others. And, you know, when you reflect back on your own experience with school as a student, what was that like for you? Were you a student who was well behaved? Were you in trouble? Did you hate school, love school?
Oh yeah, man, I was good. I mean, I was a teacher. I took pride in being a teacher's pet. I was the type of kid that knew that my teacher called my mama, my daddy, that first of all, they gonna be on the teacher's side. So it don't matter what I say. Yeah. They just better not get a call from the teacher. My parents better not receive a call from the teacher. So they encouraged me to do what I was supposed to do. Was I a straight kid? No, I wasn't a straight kid. But, you know, and that by itself has a story by itself, you know, because I recall when I was in middle school, and unfortunately I was in algebra 1 and English 1 to 8th grade. Unfortunately, there were not a lot of kids who looked like me in those classes. And so what would happen is that kids would say negative things to me. Not necessarily the kids that were in the classes, but kids that were outside the class. They would call me Uncle Tom, or they would say, now I'm acting white, simply because I was in those classes. So it was hard for me to be successful, but not necessarily, well, to do good in school, but also be ridiculed for it. Right. So, and I understand and it still happens today, man. There are some kids who are smart in school, but they're afraid that they're going to be ridiculed because of it. So I can share that experience with them that, hey, it's okay to be smart, but it's one of those things that's a hard pill to swallow as a kid, because the only thing you see right there is that these kids are in your ear about your success, and they can't see 10 years down the road when you're graduating from college because you were effective in doing what you're supposed to do here in middle school. So I think there are highs and lows. I was a good kid, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't without any type of issues either. But that's where that relationships come back in with my guidance counselor. I can recall going to Miss Davis, my guidance counselor, and sitting in her class and sitting in her office once I got off the bus and sitting there to sort of shelter myself from the kids who were picking at me or whatever. And I can remember talking to my principal. I remember one time my principal, Mr. Stamps, I was in class answering questions, and he called me to my office. I thought I was in trouble. So he called me to his office. He calls my mom at Kmart. He doesn't say, he's not telling me what's going on. He calls my mom at Kmart and just to tell her, hey, I'm proud of Leonard. He's been doing what he's supposed to do in class. So it's those small things right there that I remember that are so impactful. Can I tell you who taught me the Pythagorean theorem? Probably not. But I can tell you about those experiences, those relationships that I had with my teachers, all 12, 13 of them, that inspired me to be where I'm in today. So I just want to give that back to my kids here at this school.
Well, you know, that's a really powerful anecdote you shared there. And, you know, I really resonated with the part that you were like, I wasn't really a bad kid, but I knew my mom and dad better not get that phone call, because I was the same way. Like my mom, I wasn't ever really in trouble in school because I knew if mom got that call, whatever the teacher said, she would believe. And that teacher could lie on me all she wanted to. My mom would say, you just wait. Or I'll do it right here in front of the teacher or something.
Exactly. But, old school, man. Old school.
Yeah. But you know, one thing that I heard you say that really struck me was, you know, I think some of us, we can resonate with some of that story of, you know, feeling like, you know, you're put into this algebra class in 8th grade or this other class, and you're looked at or made fun of by some of your peers because you're like, oh, you're the smart one, or you're the nerd, or all this stuff. But to throw in that other element too, where I think that it's different, that I wouldn't have had to go through. And that's what you said of, you know, also dealing with there's not a lot of kids in class who look like me. And so my friends are the ones who are saying, are calling me even more things because I stand out.
That's right.
And I'm trying to be more successful academically. And so I think, that adds to your story and what you've gone through and how you can relay that to students you work with now. And I think that's powerful and something that some of us with more privilege forget, that there are additional battles that people go through that aren't always on the surface and aren't always obvious.
That's right. And that's how I learned the code switch. I mean, I know about code switching now, but I cannot speak the same way on the basketball court as I'm supposed to in the classroom.
Yeah.
So, but I want my kids to understand it's okay to code switch. You need to know when to speak correctly. I mean, I'm sure there's nobody on the basketball court that's making sure that you enunciate your words and things like that. But when you come into the classroom or when you're going to do an interview, when you participate, that's the time where you're supposed to show what you know. Yeah. And don't come into this situation acting as if you don't know any better.
Right.
So yeah, but I've been blessed. So I really have been blessed to learn those things, and hopefully I can pass it on to my kids here at this school.
I love that. And I'm so glad you brought up the code switching too, because I remember when I was educated on that as a younger teacher, that was such a new concept to me. And it just made me empathize and understand a lot more, a little bit, or not a lot more, but more of where my students were coming from and the ways that they were having to do so much extra work sometimes from what other kids are having to do. So I'm glad you mentioned that too. Well, Leonard, I could listen to you all day long. I love you and your work, but the last question I always love to end on is the fact that, there's some really firm held beliefs and ideas that we just hold to our hearts that are part of who we are. And so for anybody listening or watching today, if you wanted them to walk away with just one thing, what would your one thing be?
Everyone deserves to be loved, man. Everyone deserves to be loved. Doesn't matter how they come into this school or how you see them on the street. Everyone, and what I like about Utah is that you're telling this story. Everybody has a story. So that's probably the reason why this person looks like this or they're behaving like this. Even when we go back into the classroom, sometimes kids misbehave, but we don't know what happened before they got on the bus that morning. Exactly. And because everybody needs to be loved, deserves to be loved, then we must take the time out to listen to them and figure out what's going on with them. So I really do love everybody. I think everybody has something that can possibly bring to our school and to our world. But sometimes some folks need a little extra help getting it out.
I think that's a beautiful way to end this conversation. Well, Leonard, like I said, I think you are amazing. I love anytime I get to talk to you.
Yes, sir. I
can't thank you for coming on.
Of months, man.
I know we need to actually be in the same place at the same time. We never are. But Leonard, thank you and keep up the great work.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And thank you everybody for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get your stuff, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Leonard has inspired you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.